Good morning, everyone. Welcome back, and we hope you all had an enjoyable Pesach holiday. This morning, we have a very special program planned for you in honor of Yom Hashoa, Tavshin Pei Aleph, 5781. We have the opportunity to engage in conversation with a very, very special person, Jack Joseph. In addition to Jack, we're going to have a video recording of another special Fifth Avenue Synagogue member, Mrs. Rose Romerovski. Both Jack and Rose are survivors, and they somehow managed to emerge from the Nazi inferno while still holding on to their faith, which is a truly remarkable thing. I think very few of us in the shul, I don't know anyone in the shul who's not completely amazed by Jack Joseph, his personality, his faith, his commitment to the shul. He may be one of the longest distances of the entire community to come to the shul on a regular basis. Even this year, we had the honor and opportunity to have Jack show up, always the first one with his black coffee, right? What do you drink? Black coffee or tea? Which one do you drink? I forgot.
Coffee.
Black coffee, no sugar, nothing like that ever. One of the first ones to come. And whenever he's asked about how he has the strength and courage to do this, I think if I remember correctly, he remarks, "This is nothing to the work I had to do when he freed me when I left the concentration camp many, many years ago." He always, the day of his liberation is always a very special moment. And he was an inspiration. Him and Rose are really inspiration to all of us, to go through everything they went through, to remain not only committed to their faith, but dedicated to their faith, to rebuild their lives here in America. And they are integral members of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and they are loved. I say this with all earnestly. They are loved by many, many, many people value their friendship and their presence. It's a great honor to engage with you in dialogue this morning, Jack. Jeffrey Justin will formally introduce this morning's program. Jeffrey and his wife, Sandra, have been loyal and active members of our shul for so many years, and we are truly lucky to have them as part of our community. And the family has been involved in so many different levels and ways. Jeffrey is a trustee. Sandra is active. Ethan, not too long ago, when their son had a bar mitzvah in the shul. Truly a wonderful family with amazing children. I can say from firsthand experience, amazing children, and we bless them only to have nachas and good health for many, many years of the wonderful family. Now, Jeffrey and Jack are quite close. I'm sure we're going to hear about this a little bit shortly, going back many generations. They sit together next to in shul. Of course, they don't talk during services, only before and after they talk. But they sit together in shul for many, many years. The family has a rich history, dear, dear friends, and we bless them that they should continue to sit together in shul for many, many more years and expand their friendship and commitment to one another in good health. I'd like to call upon Jeffrey to introduce this morning's program.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was quite an introduction. I'd like to say good morning to everybody. It is truly my honor today to introduce Jack Joseph, a man I've known all my life. Jack was at my bris, my bar mitzvah, my wedding, the bris of my son, the bar mitzvah of my son. When my father got off the boat in New York after concentration camp, my father was in Auschwitz and Dachau, the first door he knocked on was Jack Joseph's door. Many had money sent over to the United States, and for my father, that person was Jack Joseph. So at 5 a.m., my father was knocking at Jack's door, trying to get his money. It was the beginning of a great friendship. A few days later, my father bought a car. He called up Jack to tell him, and Jack said, Mazel Tov. My father said, no, I don't think you understand. I need you to come down here with me. Jack asked why. My father said, I bought the car, but I don't know how to drive it, so I need you to teach me. Jack taught many people how to drive through life, going from light to darkness, from darkness to light. He's been an inspiration to many. His love of life and dedication to Judaism is an example for us all. I can't think of a better way to commemorate Yom Hashoa than honoring Rose and Jack, both pillars of our community. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce one of the most important people in my life, Jack Joseph.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. That was really amazing. Go ahead, Jack.
You can answer.
Jeffrey, that was a great introduction.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really special. So Jack.
Yeah.
It's great to be with you today. We really appreciate your time and doing this for the community. You're always available for the community, and you always do such wonderful things, and you're such a great role model to all. So everyone, I'm sure, has read Jack's book, An Unbelievable Thing, the Jack Joseph's Dark Journey. Today, we're going to focus on when Jack arrived in New York. So Jack, do you want to start with when you came to New York? You want to start when you came to Fifth Avenue Synagogue? I'll let you decide. What would you like to talk about first?
Well, I was friendly with a member of the Fifth Avenue Synagogue, Saul Klein, an uncle of George Klein. And he used to live on 72nd Street, 114 East 72nd Street. And so I was Shabbos invited there for lunch. So I went to the Fifth Avenue Synagogue. After a couple of weeks, I came to the synagogue. He introduced me to Herman Merkin.
What year was this?
That was in 1966.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah.
So 1966, okay.
Yeah, he introduced me to Herman Merkin. And a couple of days later, I received a letter from Mr. Merkin. He said that he would invite me to join the Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and he'll be my sponsor. So all you have to do, he said in the letter, send me in a check for $350 and you'll be a member. So I sent him in a check and I've been a member ever since then.
Wonderful. So that's, thank you for sharing that, Jack. So tell us a little bit about what the shul was like in the 60s. Was it vibrant? Was it crowded? It was a relatively new building, right?
It was a very special thing to be a member in the Fifth Avenue Synagogue. Was the prestige things, the Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and I think it still is today, to this very day. But things were different in those days.
So tell us about the differences.
I was friended Jules Cohen and Ruben Shulsky, and actually the Hirschers, Henry Hirsch and his wife. And I was invited a few times for lunch to the Hirschers on Saturday with Ruben Shulsky. And it was different. There was no kiddush like we are giving now, not now particularly, but we used to give a big lunch in the synagogue. And those days, all they gave was a piece of cake and a drink. And then Jules Cohen was the first one that donated $20,000 to the synagogue. They should give fish every Shabbos. And that's where the big lunches started, from Jules Cohen. He started it. Anyway, I feel very happy that I was able to join the Fifth Avenue Synagogue. Unfortunately, today, there is very few of the people that I knew then. They're not around anymore.
Well, we're going to talk, you're going to introduce Rose as a video tribute, but I know you and Rose go way back, right? You knew her husband, and was Rose there when you were there?
Romerovski.
Rose Romerovski, I know still from Europe. Yeah, and when I knew her husband, I knew her before she was married, of course, and her husband I knew when I first came to America, we davened in the same shul. And they were both single then, and they didn't even dream to get married to each other. They didn't know each other. So I know Rose for a very long time, yeah. Yeah, Rose comes from a very reputable, Orthodox, Jewish, very religious people from
The same town as my mother.
The same town as my wife came from.
Berexaz.
Yeah. Berexaz, yeah.
So were there many other Holocaust survivors in the shul when you joined, Jack?
Yeah, there were a lot of Holocaust survivors then, but they're not around now. Yeah.
Do you remember their names?
I don't remember their name, but there's a lot of Holocaust survivors, yeah.
So tell us, who was the rabbi then, who was the chazan? Give us some color for the younger generation.
When I joined the shul, Rachman was just joined the shul. Yeah.
Rabbi Rachman.
Rabbi Rachman was the rabbi there then, and he was a prestige thing. He was a very special person, Rabbi Rachman, and.
Bernard Bloomstein, who was the chazan at that point in time?
They had no chazan in those days.
Who was the Baal Tefillah then?
One member in the shul, he was in the jewelry business. I don't remember his name offhand now. He used to daven.
I think Bernard.
We had no chazan. The first chazan actually hired in the Fifth Avenue Synagogue was about 45 years ago, was Malovani.
It's almost 50, but that's good.
Yeah.
You might be right. I'm sorry. The cantor will correct us. You might be right. Maybe your numbers are correct. 45 is what you're saying?
Yeah, he's been 45 years in the shul. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure it's about 45 years. No,
don't hold me to it.
50 years. No.
And
I knew Malovani from London also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and Jack, you were always walking very far to the shul? You walk like 40 minutes now. Where were you living in those days?
It used to take me 25 minutes. And then even now...
From 35th Street.
From 36, it would take 25 minutes, never longer. Now, even then, now with a walker, it took me an hour, a little less than an hour. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I was a fast walker, you know, and I never stopped going to shul. Yeah. Yes,
you're a regular attendee, and everyone loves seeing you, and you're always there early, so you're which is very appreciated.
Yeah.
So Jack, tell us a little bit.
I'm early wherever I go. I'm never late to an appointment.
Okay. So tell us, what was it, a young demographic when you joined the shul? Were there kids around? What was it like in those days, in the 60s?
There were very few kids around. There were very few kids. Of course, a lot of members, like later on, the Reddit came in with little children, and Hadi came in with a little boy, but it was all later on. In those days, there were very few children in the shul.
So where was Jerry? Jerry wasn't around then?
Jerry was in England then. Yeah.
He sent me to a boarding school.
Jerry was in school in England, yeah. When he came home, I used to bring him to shul. And of course, my grandchildren, since they were 2 years old, they walked to shul with me.
Right. And
they walked to Fifth Avenue Synagogue from my house. Every one of my grandchildren.
And one of your grandchildren went to the army, right? I remember.
Yeah, one of them was in paratroopers in Israel, and
before college, he volunteered.
Before college, yeah.
As a lone soldier.
Yeah, he was actually 4 years in Israel. He was 2.5 years in the army. In 1.5 years, he was
in a yeshiva.
And he was partly working for the Hatzalah, for the Israeli
Hatzalah.
Magan David. Yeah.
So what was New York like in the 60s? Because people are talking now with COVID, and things have changed. What was the opportunities like in New York? Was it a positive vibe? Can you tell us a little bit about the 60s?
In the 60s, life was period for refugees. Of course, for people like me, it was very difficult to come in to live in New York and try to make a living. You know, it was very hard because you had to compete with giants.
That's
in
the 50s.
Yeah, in the 50s, yeah.
So tell us about that, Jack, because I know...
50s was go-go days. You know, New York was booming, right?
Yeah.
New York business was booming.
In what years, Jerry? I'm sorry?
Well, he came here in 48. So
Right.
in the 50s, he started his business in what, 50?
I started
51?
my business in 53.
53.
Got it. So you were here almost 15 years before you joined the synagogue, give or take, right? You were already in New York 15 years?
I came to New York in 1948, yeah.
Okay, so tell us about that, because it's not in your book, but tell us about, you know, what that was like and how you started your business, maybe.
Well, things were totally different. It was, the dollar had a very big value when I came here.
Well, let me just interfere. When the war ended, my father had two brothers in London who got stuck there during the war, and they became very successful in business. And my father joined them. When the war was over, he went to Paris to call them because you couldn't make a call from anywhere else to London, and they got him papers to come into England. And he moved to London, and he had a car. He went into business with them, and he had a good life. He met my mother in school, learning English. All the refugees where were you learning English? Who was?
London County Council School.
London County Council. All the refugees were learning English. And my father sat behind my mother, was bothering her, kept asking her what the teacher said. So my father came here in 48, and his brother was already here, and he had a big convertible. He was all set up with an apartment. It was a very good life. My father is one of the lucky survivors from the war. My father was not in concentration camp. My father was never caught. And that's maybe in the book, but he was never caught. My mother was in Auschwitz. So he was unusual that he survived and he came out of it.
So positive.
Baruch Hashem, there was a future. And he came to America because he didn't want to stay in London. He was in business in London, in his brother's business. They were very successful, but he wanted to do his own thing. Is that why you came here?
Yeah.
Why? Why did you come to the United States?
I came to the United States because they thought while I was in London in 1948, it was the Berlin blockade. And everybody thought that World War III is going to break out because of Berlin. And since we didn't have anybody in America from the family living here, I was very lucky because I was able to come to America.
With Uncle Willie, with Michelle's father.
Yeah, well, he was here only for a visit.
Okay.
Yeah. So I came to America. I was the only one that could come to America because I had an immigration visa to America.
Did you have citizenship when you came to America and you were in England? Were you a citizen of anywhere?
No.
What were you? What were your papers?
I was stateless.
Stateless.
Yeah. I came to America, and here it was very tough. I met somebody that was a salesman in the lingerie business, and I was introduced to him, and he had lost his job, so he talked me in to go into the lingerie business.
That was your first. Is it in the 40s?
That was in 1953.
53.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey, when was the story with your father meeting Jack? What year was that, Jeffrey?
His father came in 1949 to America.
Wow, so you guys really go back.
That's right, Jeffrey? When his father got off the boat, he had my address. He walked to your house. He got my address in Prague from my brother. And he gave my brother $1,800, and I was going to give him the $1,800 in New York. So in the meantime, the rumors were in Prague that whoever comes to America and they send money over here, he doesn't get it back. So when he arrived on the boat at night, in the evening, he got off the boat. He was sitting there till early in the morning, about 4 in the morning. At 4 in the morning, he walked to my place.
On the west side, the Upper West Side.
I lived on 94th Street and Broadway. I had an apartment there. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, somebody knocks at my door. It was freezing cold, raining outside. I said, who is that? He said, Zoltan. His name, we called him Zoltan. His name was Zoltan. So,
did you know Jeffrey's father before? Did you know Jeffrey's father before?
From Prague.
Oh, you knew him. You knew him.
Yeah, I met him once or twice. I didn't know him before, but my brother knew him very well.
When the war ended, he was living in Prague.
He was older than me, Jeffrey's father. Anyway, I said, Jeffrey, I said, Tsotsi, where are you coming from? He said, I just got off the boat and you're my first stop. And I just came here because I want to know one thing. Are you going to give me my money or not? I said, why shouldn't I give you your money? He said that everybody says whenever you send money to, you don't get it back. I said, Zoltan, Tsotsi, don't worry, I'll give you your money. He said, when? I said, I can give it to you right now. So he came with me in the bedroom. I lifted my cushion up and I counted out $1,800 to him. He says, Jack, he didn't call me Jack, he called me uncle. No, I'll take my coat off and you can make me a coffee. That's how it started. The next thing I heard from him, a telephone call a week later, he said, I need a favor from you, Jack. I said, what do you need? He says, I bought a car, I want you to come and pick it up. I said, why do you need me to pick your car up? He says, I don't know how to drive. So, I said, why did you buy a car if you don't know how to drive? He says, are you going to teach me? Said, all right. So I went to pick up the car and I taught him how to drive. And I never forgot the car. It was an 88 Oldsmobile. Oldsmobile had 88 and 98. 98 was the big one with the rocket engine. So he bought an 88 Oldsmobile. So that's where, and from there on.
I'm sorry, didn't he need a driver's license too?
I got him a driver's license and he dressed beautifully. His father was a very good dresser, always wore a bow tie and beautiful suit always wore. And that's where our relationship started.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Jack. So go back. So you started in the lingerie business.
Started the lingerie business. It was very, very tough. It was a struggle, really. And that's it. When we couldn't make a living, he left. He went into the insurance business, and I started operating myself and started going to sell the chain stores. And it was very difficult because I was a newcomer. I knew the language probably as good as anybody else because I spoke a British accent. I learned English, British English I spoke. And it was very, very tough without going into too many details. So I used to go in to every day, different buyers, you'd see salesmen, which they had to see.
Open days.
Otherwise, if you call up for an appointment, you couldn't get it. So, but on seeing day, they had to see you. So I went to a very important account. It was Hartfield stores in the Californian chain. And everybody said, if you can sell her, the whole market is going to buy from you because she's recognized as the best important buyer.
She was like Amazon today.
Yeah, her name was Jerry Rich.
Okay.
So, and she, whatever I showed her, she said she's not interested. This is not the type of merchandise for her. And really was treating me very, very rough. And while I was sitting at another time in the waiting room, I started talking to somebody who was an old timer in the lingerie business, and he knew every buyer, and he did at that time. I was looking to do $150,000, $200,000 a year. He did 10 million at that time already. So he was a big field he was a big person in the industry. So I told him that she is so rough to me. He said, "You wouldn't believe it, Jack. She's a girl from Borough Park. Her name is Geraldine Reich, from a very nice Balbatish Jewish family." So I kept on going till she didn't buy. One day, and I was very nice, I thanked her for the time. Even though she didn't buy and she insulted me, I never said a bad word to her. I always was kind and thanked her. And one day I walk in there and she said, "Why are you coming back here? I told you your merchandise is not for my stores and I'm not gonna buy it." So I was very upset because she used a language that I wasn't used to. So I answered her, I said, "The reason I come back was I would hope that one day I'll talk to Geraldine Reich, not Jerry Rich." And I took out a pencil and I said, because Jerry Rich talks from this pencil. This is her power. She writes orders and she's a big person. But I was waiting one of these days, maybe Geraldine Reich is going to talk to me. And she started crying like, like a little girl.
Beautiful.
Actually cried that I said this to her. And she apologized and walked out. And she said, "I'll see you." And the same afternoon, she came to my office. She became my best friend, my best customer.
Beautiful.
Because of selling her, I was able to sell, and that's how it started. Basically, that was the beginning of my success in the lingerie business.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. That's a beautiful. So what's the lesson? Persistence, or?
My nephew was president of UJA.
Right. What's his name? What was his name?
His name was, I can't think of his first name.
That's okay.
He's a famous guy.
Yeah.
But my father, the end of the story is my father ended up in the business becoming friends with Sam Walton from when he started his company. So, you know, he's come a long way.
Yeah, anyway, that's the story of starting the lingerie business.
So Jack, wasn't it at that time, it was very hard? Didn't a lot of people get jobs on Monday and lose them on Fridays because of Shabbos? Wasn't it very challenging? What was it like in those days in that regard?
In those days, when I came, it was not so difficult. Before I came, it was difficult to get a job if you didn't work on Shabbos. Yeah. When I came, it was different already. But don't forget, I didn't go into business in 1953. Things were changing all the time. When I came here, the subway was 10 cents. And for 25 cents, I had a lunch. And Horn and Harvard, you could go in the automat and you got a coffee for 10 cents. And
roll with butter.
A roll with butter for 15 cents. And with jam on it, you could have all the seltzer you wanted for free. So a quarter was a lunch in those days that I came. Yeah.
And New York real estate probably wasn't nearly as expensive as it is today in the 50s.
No. I used to change on every Sunday $10, and the following Sunday I still had change left.
So the dollar went very far in the
The
50s.
dollar went very far, yeah. The salary was $7, $8 a week. A good job was $10, $12 a week. It was a good job, yeah.
Got it.
Why didn't you get a job?
I didn't have a profession. I couldn't get a job.
You couldn't get a job.
No, I didn't have a profession, no.
So you had to start your own business,
I had to start my own business, yeah.
which ended up being a great thing. Thank God. Right?
Yeah.
So Jack, tell us. I know we said we're going to focus on New York, Fifth Avenue in the future, but you're surviving the Holocaust, not having to go. Like, was all miracles? Can you talk about it a little bit? In other words, your ability to avoid the concentration camps. How do you? Is there anything you can say about that?
Well, in 1939, when the Czechoslovakian government became independent and became
Slovak.
It became Slovakia, and they became allies of the Germans. They started laws, restrictions against Jews, little by little. At the end, they took away the businesses from the Jewish people, you know. So life was very tough. Anyway, by 1942, they started taking people, they said, sort of to work from 16 to 45. And when this happened, my father did not like the whole situation. They said, we got to run away from there. So the only place we could run was Hungary.
From Medzilaborce in Slovakia.
We were going to run away to Hungary. And we were the first ones really to run away. When my father then moved his children all away from the town we lived in, and he came to the synagogue and everybody attacked him that he's making a panic. They didn't believe that nobody thought that they are really going to kill you. And if they take you to work, they say it isn't the worst thing because the war is not going to last forever, and we'll survive the hardship with going to work and all the other restrictions. My father said they're not taking you to work because if they took you to work, they wouldn't take so-and-so without fingers. When they take a hand without fingers, and they take a person that wears a crutch, he said, this is not to work.
Or they carry him in his bed.
Yeah, this is not to work. Anyway, so
your father was in the minority, right? Most people, your father was unusual that he saw it.
The only person, really the only one that moved, ran away. He didn't run away. It made sure his children got away from home.
So your father really saved you. It's really your father knew, and therefore he saved you.
He didn't trust. He didn't believe what's going on. He didn't believe anything that they were being told. So he made a panic in the community. So they were afraid what he would say.
We escaped to Hungary in 1942, and in 1944. The same thing happened in Hungary. Hungary was a very hard life for us.
But let me just say something. So his town is 1942. They made a secret list in every town, a census of every Jew, man, woman, child. They found it in the archives in Slovakia. And a year after they made it was 1942. And they sent a train to Medzilaborce. Everybody was reported to go on the train. There were supposed to be 920 Jews, men, women, children, to go on the train. That train was going to go to Lublin, Poland, okay, and to Majdanek. But my father missed that train by a few days. My father, my grandfather. Of the 920, 850 men, women, children from his town got on that train. They were forced onto the train. They got to Lublin. A week later, they were all dead. They never even made it into Majdanek.
Wow.
My father missed that train. His name, we have the list. My father's name was on the list, and my grandfather, my uncles and aunts.
When you say he missed the train, was he running late? What does that mean, Jerry? He missed the train.
They escaped. They escaped. Can I just say the way you were escaped? They were arrested. There was a law in Slovakia that if you are in jail awaiting to see a judge, you cannot be deported.
Wow.
They got arrested by the head of like the IRS in that region. My father went to him. My grandfather sent him to him because he liked my grandfather. And he sent police cars and he arrested my grandfather and his brothers, sisters. My father was already in the office and they put them all into jail. This is about 100 kilometers from Medzilabordze.
And he was doing this to help the family,
Save
correct?
them. He was recognized as a righteous among Gentiles.
Wow.
What was his name? Licky. What was his name? Remember? Licky. Well, he was recognized maybe 10 years ago. He saved a lot of people. And he was like the head of the police of the IRS police, the tax police. And he arranged for an escape after 2-3 months in jail on the way to court. Then my father and everybody made it to the Hungarian border, and they'd have to go through the woods to get to Hungary. So that's how he wasn't on that train in 1942. Nobody survived from that train. So, but that's the beginning of many stories. Can you tell the story about the yeshiva when you got to, you were in Hungary?
Yeah, well.
With the Rebbe?
Yeah, she left.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so anyway, in 1944, when they took the Hungarian Jews, it was on the last day of Passover was Saturday. On Sunday, which is called Isra Chag, I escaped back from Hungary with my oldest brother to Slovakia. Yeah. And
well, how did you escape? Your father told you to leave immediately.
The family decided that me and my brother will escape to Slovakia, and we will see if we can find a hiding place there, and we'll either come back or hire smugglers to bring them back to Slovakia. So we escaped to Slovakia, and in Slovakia, we found out that while we escaped, they were rounded up the Hungarian Jews already. So we couldn't do anything for my family. And I ended up going to Nitra. There was the Jewish quarter in Nitra was
the Vatican.
Called the Vatican. That it was protected by the Vatican. So people like me that were illegal or hiding, if they got into this area, they were safe. So
you broke up. People like you had what, Jack? Say that again. You're into that.
Who were illegal, who were hiding.
Who was
hiding.
Right,
okay.
Jewish kids.
I was 2 years in Hungary, and then I escaped back to Slovakia. So we got ourselves, me and my brother, Gentile papers. And after I had the papers, my brother was still staying close to the border to see if he can bring his wife back from Hungary. He had a child and a wife in Hungary still. But and in the meantime, my brother decided, we met somebody from Nitra, Chesky Lando. He was trying to also bring his children back from Hungary. He sent me to Nitra. He said, if you go there, you'll be safe, and it's a yeshiva, and it's just beautiful. So I went to Nitra, and I was there a few weeks, and things were pretty good there. And after a few weeks there, the head of the yeshiva came in And he said to me, I hear somebody told me that you have Gentile papers. I said, yes. I was happy that he asked me. I thought he wants to find out how we could get them.
Sure.
He said, if you have Gentile papers, you can't stay here. So I said, what do you mean I can't stay here? Where am I supposed to go? He said, you are not supposed to be here. You can be on the outside, not in this area.
He was worried that
I couldn't believe that. I said, I'm going to the rabbi to complain, Rabbi Ungar. So I went to see the rabbi.
The Nitra Rebbe.
The Nitra Rebbe, and he says, when I told him that story, he says, do you really have papers? I said, yeah. He said, then you shouldn't be here. And I was totally shocked. I said, I cannot believe it. So the Nitra Rebbe said, I'm saying this for your own good. This is not a safe place. We make the population believe that it's protected by the Vatican. It's bribed a few officials and they let us use the name that it's protected by the Vatican. It is not a safe place. Who knows how long we will be able to pay them and how long they will be able to protect us. So I left there, and sure enough,
no, he told you there's a rule. One thing you cannot do.
Yeah. So anyway, before I left, I said, "Can you give me a brucha?" So he says he gave me a brucha, and he said to me, "I want to tell you one thing. You seem to be worried about kosher and Shabbos. You don't have to worry about Shabbos. You don't worry about kosher. There's only one thing you have to worry, how to survive that war. That's all you have to worry. You can do anything you want. Don't worry about eating treif. Except one thing you can't do. You cannot deny that you are Jewish." And I was totally shocked. I said, "You are sending me out from here on Gentile papers. I'm going to live as a Gentile. And now you tell me if they ask me if I'm Jewish, I can't say it." He says, "No, you cannot deny that you are Jewish. If you were approached with a question, are you Jewish? You cannot say you are not." I said, "Well, what am I supposed to say?" He said, "You will find something else to say." He said, "Maybe they won't stop you, maybe they won't ask you." And I left. 3 weeks later, the Nitra yeshiva was totally destroyed. A lot of people were killed on the spot. A lot of people were sent to Auschwitz. The rabbi himself managed to escape and died in the forest. And I was living in another city as a Gentile, registered by the police as a Gentile. And I was we had a very good place where to live. My brother found an apartment. And after a while, a new law came out, not for Jews, but for Gentiles, because they found a lot of Jews with Gentile papers. So the Gentiles had to get new identification cards. And I was registered by the police then, and I went to get an identification card. And me and my brother, we didn't go together. He went ahead of me. It was there was lines of people, but for the local population. My brother went there, gave him a picture with a form, and they stamped it, 1, 2, 3. And I come before that official, he looks at me, he said, "Aren't you Jewish?" And I suddenly, like a blackout, I see the rabbi's face in front of me. And I burst out laughing. And he laughed, and the people around me, everybody started laughing. There was no conversation exchanged. He stamped my papers and I went out. I left. When I came downstairs, I don't know what happened. I collapsed and I found myself in a doctor's office with my brother. They tried to
revive you.
To revive me, yeah. So that's what, since then, I believe in Rabbi's stories.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's not in the book, is it? Is that story in the book?
In the book, yeah.
In the book. Okay, I missed that part. So I just want to get Rose did a video tribute, Jack. So I want to, Sheila's here. So I want to get Sheila. I want to get we want to hear Rose's video tribute now. Let me just text her.
My husband, Martin Romerovski, of blessed memory, I moved to the east side from the west side in 1978. Martin has always enjoyed walking over to spend the Shabbos services at Fifth Avenue Synagogue. For him, moving to the east side was a dream come true. With a short amount of time, we purchased the Sefer Torah, which we led to the synagogue. A Torah Manda is dedicated to my husband's parents, Sarah and Abraham Romerovski, as well my dear parents, Hannah Menachem Mendel, Emanuel Zucker, who along with my younger sister Rivkele were killed in Auschwitz. My family home in Beretzaz was known for a philanthropy. Every day, poor people would come to our house to receive sustenance as well as wine before Shabbos, as my father was a wine merchant. I credit my uncle Ferry Ephraim Hochhauser Horny with my survival during the war years. So many of my closest relatives perished during the war. Miraculously, a total of 4 of my siblings survived. My 2 older sisters, blessed memory, lived in Brooklyn, while my 2 brothers of blessed memory lived in West Coast. We were very close and always shared simchas together. My husband Martin became president of Fifth Avenue Synagogue. During his tenure, he was active in the priesthood program and instituted the Shalashudas Shabbos afternoon meal. I became a treasurer of Women's Club and helped raise a lot of funds through theater parties and other venues. The Women's Club successfully donated Sefer Torah with an ark that is used by the Israeli army. Some of my fondest memories of that time was the annual Purim place that the congregant of our shul participated in. Another highlight was decorating the shul sukkah. Martin and I were blessed with 2 daughters, Hannah Newman, of blessed memory, who loved to attend Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and Rebecca Rosenbaum. I am fortunate to have many grandchildren, great-grandchildren, who are walking in a footstep of our ancestors. Thank you very much, and best regards.
Rose is a very special member, and we appreciate her doing that. Rabbi, did you have any questions for Jack?
Yes, I just had 2 topics to ask him about. First, I wanted to thank Jack for spending time with us this morning, as well as his son Jerry and Jeffrey Justin. As always, a pleasure to see you. Thank you once again for allocating some time to address our community. Now, Jack, I have to say that you are admired by many in the community, and you inspire many of the community, primarily because of your positivity, that always an upbeat person, a bright outlook on life, very committed to health, and which is also quite admirable. And you're always with a great story. There's never a dull moment. A story about this chassid and about Europe, about your business. Always a fascinating story whenever anyone's in your presence. Now, being that you went through a lot of trials and tribulations in your life, and many people who experience such ordeals did not emerge with the same positive attitude. So the first question we have for you is that really what was your inspiration to go through all your challenges back in Europe, and even in America, it sounded like it wasn't always so smooth. In America, what exactly is and was your source of inspiration and courage that you maintain even at this point in your life, such an incredible optimism, a smile, and commitment to your ideals?
Jack, Jerry, you might be on mute. Jerry?
No, we heard you.
Okay,
We
sorry.
want to know what drove you along this whole time, during the war and in the United States, difficulties in the beginning of the business. What was your inspiration? What was, besides the fact that he's driven, okay? He's a driven person.
Like that. But he's not a bitter person. A lot of people could have developed some bitterness over the years. And I think one of the reasons everyone likes to be around you is because of your positive nature. So what exactly is the source of this
how could you
positivity?
have a positive attitude with all this that's going on?
It's with my upbringing. It all comes from my father. The way we were raised, and my whole survival is because my father brainwashed us how to behave and what to do. The first thing he said, the first thing you do, make sure you remain clean. Always clean, no matter what happens. You got to find water and wash yourself and stay clean. Because if you're not going to be clean, that's where all the sicknesses will start. Yeah. Anyway, I think for the today's generation, they should read my book that I wrote in between the lines. I'm not trying to sell my book, but I just say if they read the book, they will get a good idea how my father thought and what he did and what he told us. And I use these things through my life. Yeah. I always say if you know a black Gemara in Tosfos, this is harder than any business to go into. Believe me. So if you're determined and you have patience and you are nice, always nice, no matter how mistreated you get by people, you don't do the same thing. If you try to mistreat a person that doesn't like you, you put yourself in his class. You got to stay in your class no matter what happens. Yeah. And this has paid off in the long run. Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. So it leads to the next question, which you touched upon. And I remember that I once visited you when you were in the hospital a few years ago on the Shabbos afternoon. I think Jacob was there as well. And you started—
2 years ago only.
What?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And Jerry was there, and your daughter came, and your son-in-law. And we had the chance to talk when everyone left, and you were starting to reminisce about your youth, something you just touched upon now. And you mentioned, and I found it very moving, about the ideals and the values that you very much wanted to give over to your son Jerry and your grandchildren. And you talked about the next generation. So now that you have an opportunity to speak to many people of the community who also who are young or have young children, if you could let us know, like, what then, based on your rich life experiences, what are the core key values and perspectives, just like your father gave you some, which you said helped guide you throughout your life. What would you tell the next generation?
I keep on telling him, go to shul.
Go to shul.
Yeah, go to shul. Believe me, go to shul. Most of my friends, even here, talking to you, Rabbi, because I went to Fifth Avenue Synagogue, I met you. David Gold, the same, Jacob Gold, the same thing. I met you in shul. My brother escaped in 1938 to England, and he had a very close business friend, a non-Jew, and he asked him to come with him. So the non-Jew said, how can I go to England? I don't speak English. So my brother said, I don't speak English neither. I don't know anybody there. I've never been there. My brother said, I've never been to England either. He said, there is one difference between you and me. You are Jewish. You will go to a synagogue, and from there on, you'll be set. So my brother sure came to England and has never been there before. He didn't speak a word of English. And the taxi driver asked him, where do you want to go? He said, is there a synagogue? So he took him to a synagogue.
In the East End.
He lived all his life in England. All his friends were from that synagogue. Even my friends are through from his synagogue in England. That's what happens, you know. And it's a lot of stories. It's not, it's very difficult to tell you everything, but basically go to a synagogue, yeah.
He came with nothing.
His business started all from that synagogue. People that he met from that synagogue. People that met him and they told somebody else that they met somebody from Czechoslovakia, and one word led to another, and that's how they, so I tell my grandchildren, go to the synagogue.
Zach, we should include you at,
Eventually, you'll meet what you're looking for through the synagogue. Maybe they're not in the synagogue, but you'll meet them through the synagogue.
I want to add something. I've spent time, and I hear stories. I'm lucky. My father's 95, almost 96. And I hear stories lately I never heard before growing up. You know, additional parts of, I didn't hear the other parts of the stories. There's something that struck me recently. My father said, you know, I never forgot the day I arrived in Hungary in 1942. And I was broke. I had nothing. I didn't have a home. I didn't have money. I had nothing. I never forgot that feeling of having nothing. And that's how he lives his life today. He lives. He doesn't spend like he could. He doesn't partake of things. He always remembered that he ended up one day with nothing. And that struck me. And he says, whenever I see a person on the street begging for money, I know where they're from. I give them money because I know where they're at. Most people don't. So he's maintained his modest way because he remembers where he came from and what happened to him. So that's what I want to share.
It's normal people that have a family and have a job, but they don't know what homeless to be is. And we, the surviving Jews, every time when we left our home in 1942, we were literally homeless. We didn't have a closet. We didn't have a second pair of shoes. We didn't have a second pair of clothes. If you were lucky to, and you were able to put 2 shirts on, so you had an extra shirt on your body. You had to go out without a suitcase, because the minute you went with a suitcase, you were stopped. Where are you going, or where are you coming from? So when you left your home, including the food, it was on a Friday, the chicken soup was on the stove, and that's where we left it. We never saw that again, you know? So when I see personally, I go on the street, I see a homeless person lying on the street, I give him $1. So there is a homeless person next door to me, there's a church, and he's always on the floor, and I give him $1. And if I pass on Shabbos, he raises his hand, Shabbat. No money. He knows he's not getting Shabbat money. So a couple of months ago, I walk home from shul Shabbos with my grandson, and that homeless person walks over. He says, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat. And he talks to my grandson. I says, do you know? My grandson says, I know him. where do you know him from? He says, I took him yesterday for lunch. I passed by in the street. I said, well, where do you come to take him for lunch? He said he was in the hospital. I treated him. So he recognized me on the street because I treated him in the hospital. I almost cried that my grandson did this. I said, did you buy him for lunch? He said, no, I took him to a restaurant. I treated him for lunch.
Beautiful.
Because my grandson knows the story what homeless means from me. Yeah. Basically,
he was on the run for 3 years.
So
without a home.
For normal people, and I don't blame the people that don't understand what it was like to be homeless. Yeah, you know, you don't sleep in the same bed too long. You know, and you keep on going, and you can't travel with luggage.
Notice.
So it's something for people to think about. That's all. I hope nobody has to experience that. So I have been, not only me, there is a number of people that were lucky to escape, were homeless for a number of years. I've been homeless for 3 years. Yeah.
Beautiful, very moving words, and also very beautiful insight into the value of a shul. I think maybe we should appoint you as the chairman of our new members committee. With you know, you might gain a lot of new members with your attitude. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you.
It's difficult for me to talk, but if you read my book in between the lines, you'll get a pretty good picture of what it was like.
So a lot of people on the chat are asking about your book, Jack. It's called, again, An Unbelievable Thing, Jack Joseph's Dark Journey. You can get it on Amazon, correct, Jack?
No, from the person that wrote the book. He's a very nice gentleman. His name is
Evan Weiss. Daniel Evan Weiss.
He has a website.
Daniel Evans Weiss.
Okay, so we'll put it out for
people. If Amazon is out of the book, they're out.
No,
usually.
It's better to buy from him, period. Amazon gets it from him.
Okay. Okay, so we'll do that. Jeffrey, is there anything you wanted to cover today that we didn't cover yet, Jeffrey?
No, it's just, you know what, this is an observance of Yom Hashoa. Both my parents were survivors. And Jack, it's always been an amazing thing to me to see how you're always in a good mood. You're always smiling. You know, to go through something like you went through and to keep that that strength is beyond belief. It's an unbelievable thing.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for sharing that. Rabbi, you wanted to add anything? Barry Babbage?
No, I asked the questions before, and I want to thank you, Jack. And last thing, in terms of, besides from going to shul, in terms of behavior, I remember you sharing some insights about that with me. In terms of conduct, you know, what's the core value that just like your father gave you, what's a core value in terms of actual conduct and the perspective of life that you think is important for people to follow?
You're asking?
He has a question. Well, can you repeat the question?
You know, in terms of, I remember him telling me stories about his father, but in terms of, you know, actual value system and conduct about how to interact with people, what would be one lesson that you think it's important for your grandchildren, your son, your grandchildren, and others to follow?
What lesson? He wants to know, what lesson do you think you could give your grandchildren that they could follow for their lives? Which you've already mentioned, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, go to shul.
Go to shul. I like that one.
The first thing out of his mouth, go to shul.
I like that.
I tell my children to go to shul, and if you don't meet anybody that you care for, they will meet you, the people in shul, and they'll talk to other people, and they'll mention your name. Make sure you tell them your name.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Great. So Jack.
Basically, that's what it starts. And where I come from, I grew up. If you wanted to know what's happening in the world, you went to the shul.
Okay.
We didn't have any radios, we didn't have any newspapers, but all the news was always in the shul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you.
Believe me, this is a fact. Yeah. A lot of people laugh when I say this. I said, go to shul.
No, I'm not. We're
You
not laughing.
once. You may go 10 times and not meet anybody, but in the 11th time you'll meet somebody. You'll always meet somebody in shul. And I can tell you, I'm not ready for it, but I can tell you stories of people I met in shul. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Yeah.
So Jack, thank you so much for giving us your valuable time today. Really, really appreciate it. I felt like I learned so much, especially your message.
I'm sorry I wasn't able to do what I would have normally done because I haven't been feeling that good. So it's difficult for me to see, and it's difficult for me to talk at right now. But whatever.
Jerry, there must be an echo.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But Jack, we hope to see you back in shul very soon.
I hope so.
And Jerry, thanks for all your help today. And Jeffrey, thank you so much. And thank you, Rabbi. And thank you, Rose. Well, hopefully we'll get the recording right for those that missed it. Sheila will make sure everyone, but you know, Jack, you and Rose are both such amazing people, as the Rabbi said. And all of us are so fortunate enough to be connected to both of you. And thank you so much.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.